From the producers who brought you Princess of South Beach comes a new podcast, The Setup. The Setup follows a lonely museum curator, but when the perfect man walks into his life...
Well, I guess I'm saying I like you. You like me?
He actually is too good to be true.
This is a con. I'm conning you to get the Dalama painting. We can do this together.
Listen to The Setup on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey sis, it's Dr. Joy from Therapy for Black Girls. We've had 400 episodes of conversations, growth, and healing. So we're celebrating. Join us for a special episode with internationally recognized yogi Chelsea Jackson Roberts as she shares wisdom on mindfulness, movement, and motherhood.
I waited later to have children, and I still have exactly what I knew that I wanted.
You don't want to miss this special episode. Listen to Therapy for Black Girls on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Tickets are on sale now, y'all, for our 2025 iHeart Country Festival, presented by Capital One, happening Saturday, May 3rd at the Moody Center in Austin, Texas. Don't miss your chance to see Brooks and Dunn, Thomas Rhett, Rascal Flatts, Cole Swindell, Sam Hunt, Megan Maroney, Bailey Zimmerman, Nate Smith. Tickets are on sale now at Ticketmaster.com.
Sometimes as dads, I think we're too hard on ourselves. We get down on ourselves on not being able to, we're the providers, but we also have to learn to take care of ourselves. Arapaho way, you got to pray for yourself as well as for everybody else, but never forget yourself. Self-love made me a better dad because I realized my worth.
Never stop being a dad. That's dedication. Find out more at fatherhood.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Are you hungry? Colleen Witt here, and Eating While Broke is back for season 4 every Thursday on the Black Effect Podcast Network. This season, we've got a legendary lineup serving up broke dishes and even better stories. On the menu, we have Tony Baker, Nick Cannon, Melissa Ford, October London, and Carrie Harper Howie turning Big Macs into big moves. Catch Eating While Broke every Thursday on the Black Effect Podcast Network, iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your favorite shows. Come hungry for season 4.
Hi, everyone. It's Amanda Rieger Green. Welcome to Soul Sessions. Thank you for joining me. I hope all of you are doing well. There is tremendous regenerative energy that we are all experiencing, and it's like a mixed blessing. It has moments and elements of transcendence, ecstasy, bliss, beauty, breakthrough, expansiveness, that feeling of and sensation of infinite potential where you reach out and you grasp something fundamentally, innately true within yourself, and then moments or hours later, it feels utterly distant, elusive, far away. And this tends to be happening at a very rapid pace. It's like a tornado or a twister of energy, and being in the eye of a storm, it's like sometimes I come into the eye and I'm still and steady and knowing and present, and that expansive higher dimensional consciousness feels innate and true, like everything is as it's supposed to be. And then it can be, like I said, moments or hours later, and it feels fundamentally lost or just out of reach. And then I can't remember what I was putting together. I hope this resonates with you all, but I want to talk a little bit about death today. Maybe a little bit, maybe a lot of bit about death today. And as I say death and laugh, sometimes that's all you can do in the midst of immense pain, loss, and tragedy, because it is so displacing and uncomfortable. In this lifetime, I've had a lot of encounters with death on a multitude of levels, and it's one of those things that is difficult and painful, and it has also brought me the greatest transcendence and knowing of the divine. the first time my mediumship skills came through at a young age with a spirit whom I knew. It was my grandmother, my father's mother. And I was 7 years old and I was feeding the neighbor's cats. They were out of town. I was in like second grade or third. Maybe I was third grade. So I was third grade. I do know what grade I was in, but it was feeding their cats. We lived on a river, the Chafuncta River on the North Shore of New Orleans in Louisiana. They had this huge bay window and I had just fed the cats and I was about to go downstairs and I looked out the bay window and I'm in third grade and I looked out and I saw my grandmother. It was not an apparition. It was like I saw her energy in the water. It was almost like it drew me in. It mesmerized me where I remember like standing, I'm in third grade and I remember standing in trance, staring at the water, connecting with her and her telling me she had crossed over to the other side, that she had died. And she had Alzheimer's. She was ill. She lived in Baton Rouge, a couple of hours away from us. And nothing in the days leading up to that had my parents shared with me or that I known about that she was imminent in her stages of her disease progression. They hadn't talked about her taking a downturn or going downhill. She was in a care facility. But she told me she died and that she was fine, that she was free and that it was okay. And when I got back home and I walked in the house, my parents said, "Hey, sit down. We need to talk to you about something." And I said, "Oh, Grandy Ed died." And I mean, I remember the couch. I can remember the scene and them looking at me and then both of them went to, she overheard a conversation, but they didn't. And my mom and I had discussions about this later in my life, that they hadn't been talking about it because they had really just gotten a call that, the night before, and they hadn't shared anything with me, but that she had taken a turn. But I wasn't even in the house when all this discussion was going on. And I shared it matter-of-factly. And that has been a repeat theme for me around death. When I talk about death, sometimes I can sound very distant, disassociated, and matter-of-fact. And I just said, "Oh, Grandy Ed died. She's okay. She's on the other side." Like, it was like, yeah, it's happened. It's fine. And then I remember going to the funeral and she had an open casket. I mean, I remember looking into the casket and seeing her all done up, and she was extremely prim and proper. My grandmother was the most eloquent woman. And any of my family listening out there, like if you knew my grandmother, like, she was put together and next level, right? Next level, prim and proper. But I remember seeing her in the casket. I remember the emotions of the funeral and what happens after death, the beginning to mourn and grieve and process and recognize that someone is humanly not going to be there. But in that moment, I remember just saying, "Oh yeah, she's gone. She's on the other side and she's fine. She told me." And my parents, neither one of them discounted that. I think they were confused by it and trying to, figure out how I found this stuff out. But we really didn't revisit it again, the discussion. And after that, other spirits started coming to me, spirits that I was not familiar with. And in that house, I used to put all these stuffed animals around me in the bed because all these spirits would come in at night, and also, quite frankly, extra dimensional beings. And that's another story for another episode. And also a pretty miraculous story with a child I got to work with years later who was having the same visitations in her room. But spirits were coming through, extra dimensionals, and the volume just turned up. And learning to navigate that and not being able to communicate it or have the language to or the understanding. And then also thinking maybe it was just normal. Everybody had this, imaginary friends or, not so imaginary, and spirits visiting them. But it started to come through just more rapidly. And I think that first encounter, as far as seeing beyond the veil, the other side, connecting innately with a spirit that I was very close to, loss, death, it was that glimpse of, oh, she's over there and she's okay. She's totally fine. It's her energy. She's okay. And that set the wheels in motion, whether I knew it or not, for this ability to trust the process of death, whatever that may look like. It doesn't mean that I like it or enjoy it or am asking for it to show up, but I have encountered death in so many junctures in my life. Of course, I lost my other two grandparents at a later stage after that, but most impacting for me was the loss of my father at age 18. And he died in our home the Sunday morning after Easter. It was very sudden. It was acute. It was traumatic. And it was an event that forever changed my life, the course of my life. It impacted me on a consciousness level and on a spiritual level that I wouldn't puzzle piece together for many years to come. But essentially what happened is he had a pulmonary embolism and congestive heart failure. We don't know exactly, but it was some kind of combination of the two. And I remember hearing my parents downstairs. I was in high school. It was my senior year, and it was about 5:15 a.m. on a Sunday morning. And I could hear them downstairs rustling around, and my mom trying to help my dad and asking what was going on. And I remember distinctly hearing it all. And right when I woke up, I said, and my dad had not been sick leading up into this. He had been getting tired. He had just had a physical. He changed insurance. There was stuff going on, but he had not had any acute instances or issues going on prior to this. But I remember waking up in my bed and I'm curled up upstairs and I heard all the commotion and I literally woke up, heard it, and I said, in my body, it was like, oh my gosh, my dad is dying. And I remember pulling the covers over my head and saying, if you go back to sleep, this isn't real. If you go back to sleep, this isn't real. Like I knew something bad was happening. I knew there was no turning back, and whatever it was tragic and fatal. But I kept thinking, if I pull the covers over my head and go to sleep and pretend and shut this out and pretend it's not happening, it's not going to happen. Although I knew fundamentally that wasn't the case. And, about 10 seconds later, my mom is like, Amanda, come downstairs. Your dad is very sick, and, throw some jeans on and a sweatshirt, come downstairs. And I did. And, commotion ensued after that it was chaos. And my dad essentially, it was a pretty traumatic death. He just filled with fluid and essentially drowned in that fluid and couldn't speak. And the coroner, I lived in Baton Rouge, Louisiana at the time, and the coroner of Baton Rouge lived next door to us. And he was over there working on my dad before the paramedics got there. And, the paramedics arrived late. It was just a comedy of errors, to put it mildly. But what happened that was most impacting in that experience, apart from the just sheer trauma of it all, was I remember standing in my parents' doorway. The paramedics are there. Dr. Cataldi, his name was Louis Cataldi. My dad's name was Louis as well. Dr. Cataldi was working on my dad. My mom is standing there, and they're trying to resuscitate him. And I'm standing in between the doorway. And I had one foot on their carpet. There was carpet in my parents' bedroom, and then there was a wood floor in the foyer hallway. And I had one foot on the carpet, one foot on the wood floor, because I'm standing in the door frame. And I didn't know what was happening, but I knew that I wasn't in my body. Like I was in a dissociated state at the time. And up until then, of course, I didn't have the language to say I was in a dissociated state. I didn't know what that was, but I was not in my body, yet I was cognizant simultaneously. And it was like my spirit floated up to the top of the room. And I distinctly remember watching what was going on, the disorder and chaos and drama of what was happening in the room, and then noticing that my spirit had disassociated and was having some conversation, up in the ethers on the ceiling with another being. But it was like I couldn't hear the words. I just knew two things were happening at once. And literally they're working on my dad, and all of a sudden I look over and I say to the paramedics, he does not want to be intubated. And I've shared this before publicly, but the room got silent and my mom is standing there frozen because she's panicked and afraid and everything. And my mom like snapped, into awareness, and she said, she's right. He does not want to be intubated. He does not, do not intubate him. And then one of them said, how the heck does this teenager know about intubation? And then my mom just really quickly snapped off. Her father's a pharmacist. I'm a nurse. She comes from a medical family, and I mean, that was true. But at 18, it just came to me. And I realized I realized years later, because it all flooded back in. It's like putting these puzzle pieces together. And this very much relates to the energy we are experiencing now. It's like time is simultaneous. The past, the future, and the now are all relevant, and it's like puzzle pieces are coming together. And this was like years later, as the clarification of my psychic abilities came through, it all was fundamentally clear of what happened. I connected with my dad. He was communicating. And in that moment, the other thing that was happening was, it was like he got a hold of me and he said, life is about to get harder than you can imagine. And it is going to be tragic and painful for the years ahead. And you are going to succeed and achieve, and you are going to fall flat on your face and make grave mistakes. Do it all. Do it all. It all has meaning. The beauty and the success and the fulfillment and the adventures, as well as your mistakes and your challenges and your darkness and your ugliness, all of it has meaning and is leading you somewhere. And I find that to be true. I know it to be true in my experience, that what's interesting is my dad dies. It was very traumatic after that for my mom and I and my family, and a lot of things happened that really significantly impacted who I am in my life in that time. But a couple of things are quite interesting.
I'm Camila Ramon, Peloton's first Spanish-speaking cycling and tread instructor. I'm an athlete, entrepreneur, and almost most importantly, a perreo enthusiast.
And I'm Liz Ortiz, former pro soccer player and Olympian, and like Kami, a perreo enthusiast. Come on, who is it? Our podcast, Hasta Abajo, is where sports, music, and fitness collide, and we cover it all, de arriba hasta abajo. Sit downs with real game changers in the sports world, like Miami Dolphins CMO Priscilla Shoemate, who is redefining what it means to be a Latina leader.
It all changed when I had this guy come to me. He said to me, you're not Latina enough. First of all, what does that mean?
My mouth is wide open. Yeah.
History makers like the Zucar family, who became the first Peruvians to win a Grammy.
It was a very special moment for us. It's been 15 years for me in this career. Finally, things are starting to shift into a different level.
Listen to Hasta Abajo on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Presented by Capital One, founding partner of iHeart Women's Sports.
Sonoro and iHeart's My Cultura podcast network present The Setup, a new romantic comedy podcast starring Harvey Guillen and Christian Navarro. The Setup follows a lonely museum curator searching for love. But when the perfect man walks into his life...
Well, I guess I'm saying I like you. You like me?
He actually is too good to be true.
This is a con. I'm conning you. To get the Delano painting. We could do this together.
To pull off this heist, they'll have to get close and jump into the deep end together.
That's a huge leap, Fernando, don't you think?
After you, Chulito.
But love is the biggest risk they'll ever take.
Fernando's never going to love you as much as he loves this job.
Chulito, that painting is ours.
Listen to The Setup as part of the My Cultura podcast network, available on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey, this is Mel Reid, LPGA Tour winner and 6-time Ladies European Tour winner.
And Kira K. Dixon, NBC Sports reporter and host.
You forgot to say former Miss America, by the way. And we've got a new podcast Quiet Please with Mel
and Kira. We are bringing you spicy takes on sports and pop culture, some golf hacks, and interviews with incredible people who have figured out how to make golf their superpower.
Or just people we like, plus tales from the road and everything in between. By the way, golf isn't just for the dads, Brads, and Chads.
Yeah, it's actually life's cheat code, and we're not going to be quiet about it on or off the course. We're bringing on some of our friends like Michelle Wee, Heather McMahon, Amanda Balionis.
So, if you want to keep up with us and hear us yap, tune into our new podcast.
Listen to Quiet Please with Mel and Kira, an iHeart Women's Sports production in partnership with Deep Blue Sports and Entertainment. You can find us on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Presented by Capital One, founding partner of iHeart Women's Sports.
Sometimes as dads, I think we're too hard on ourselves. We get down on ourselves on not being able to, we're the providers, but we also have to learn to take care of ourselves. Arapaho way, you got to pray for yourself as well as for everybody else, but never forget yourself. Self-love made me a better dad because I realized my worth.
Never stop being a dad. That's dedication. Find out more at fatherhood.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Dr. Joy here. You may know me from Therapy for Black Girls, where we're celebrating 400 episodes of the podcast. That's a whole lot of girl Me Too moments. For years, we've had deep, thoughtful, and inspiring conversations about Black women's mental health. And now we're celebrating this milestone in a big way. In this special episode, Peloton yogi Chelsea Jackson Roberts shares how yoga has taught her to stay grounded and present while balancing motherhood and self-care.
I can't control my partner. I can't control my child. I can't control anyone outside the way that I govern myself in this world.
And the celebration doesn't stop there. We'll continue this milestone with Dr. Lauren Mims, who joins me to discuss the powerful yet sometimes challenging transition from girlhood to womanhood for Black femmes. Together, we explore how we navigate this transformative journey with strength and grace.
Black girlhood is giggling, it's sisterhood, but it is also, I think, focusing on learning how to cope with really difficult things that are happening.
With insights like these, this 400th episode celebration is one for the books. Listen to Therapy for Black Girls on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
A couple of things are quite interesting. One, that traumatic event was one of the significant turning points in my psychic abilities, because all of that trauma, the death, the acuteness of that death, it disassociated me. It taught me how to step aside, to become the observer, to channel. I mean, it's really what led into me being able to channel like I do and drop into altered states of consciousness. It has a dark side too, where I can disassociate and not pay attention and not be in my body, which I'm very aware of that today. But also what was interesting is I didn't know how to grieve. I didn't, therapy and those sorts. It was 1999, totally different than what we have access to today. And as far as the awareness around healing and grief and therapy in the mainstream, so to speak, and the availability of it, but it was kind of pushed to the side. Keep moving, keep going, keep going forward. And I had a friend reflect back to me in my mid-20s. I think I was about 26. And she said to me, we had reconnected after college, and she said to me, because something came out about my dad being dead and losing my dad and when it had happened. And she said, Amanda, I knew you all throughout college, and I had no idea your dad died. And looking back, at that moment, I realized I pushed through, I shut out. And I mean, close friends of mine knew that my father had died. It wasn't like I hid that. But a lot of people in my public persona had no idea my story, my journey, the pain. And just before my dad died, my mom had almost died the year before with breast cancer. So 11th grade and 12th grade, basically, they were pretty crappy, and I didn't know they were pretty crappy until looking back and realizing how much was going on in my life at that time and how impactful it was. But her saying to me, I had no idea that you had lost your dad just before you came to school. And I didn't know this. And it just shows me these parts of myself that reacted to trauma, that repressed pain, grief, and trauma, and the impact it had on me and also the people around me and what I put out in the world. And, looking back, what a gift that trauma was and what a tragedy it was. And then years later, into my late 20s, I end up working in hospice. And in hospice, of course, I was dealing with death on a daily basis and with interdisciplinary teams who were able to do remarkable healing and support work in the death, dying, and grief process with patients' families, and getting to walk alongside of those skilled individuals and heart-centered individuals in a multitude of capacities. But I will never forget when I started in hospice. My first job was helping to sign consent paperwork, documentation for patients coming on to hospice. And I had shadowed a cohort of mine, my friend Joe, and Joe was just great at what he did. And I remember getting to go with him and the consent process, there's legal documentation and paperwork, and people are dealing with a loved one and making the decision to sign someone onto hospice. It's a lot. It's a lot to talk someone through the documentation, the actual process, and then you're dealing with death, dying, someone dying, the family members, and then the layers of that coming through. And so I remember the very first time it was like, I think you can do this on your own. It was a really busy Friday. And they said, okay, Amanda, we're throwing you in the water. We need you. And we had a pediatric hospice, the hospice that I worked with, and we had a pretty high census, of one of the largest pediatric censuses for hospice in the country, actually. And we had an amazing pediatric team, and they needed me. It was a Friday afternoon, and they needed me at one of the Texas Medical Center hospitals in Houston. And they didn't really, they gave me some particulars about what was going on, but nothing could prepare me for what I was about to encounter. And, I was ready to go. I had all my paperwork. I was nervous just because I'm like, what if I tell them the wrong thing or I don't know the answers to the questions? And I walked into this crowded hospital room. I mean, overly crowded, so many family members. And I introduced myself, and there was a 17-year-old in the bed, really in a comatose state. And his name was Cedric. And his mom was standing right there. And when I walked in, I introduced myself, and she just hugged me. And I didn't know what to say, right? It was very overwhelming. It was shocking. And I just said, just tell me a little bit about Cedric. And she began to tell me what an amazing child and son he had been. She goes, he's such a good boy. He's a good son. She said he was amazing at sports. He always showed up. He never was in trouble. He's been such a good son. And he had stage 4 pancreatic cancer, which, if many of you have dealt with pancreatic cancer, usually it's a terminal diagnosis and it happens. The disease progression is fast. But he was 17 years old, this kid, and handsome. And she just said, we don't know why, but he's been so good. It doesn't make sense why God is taking him. And I remember sitting down with them and with that whole family around me and walking through the paperwork and talking about hospice. And we were going to move him to our inpatient unit because his condition was pretty acute and symptoms needed to be managed. And it was the best decision to get him out of that hospital setting and somewhere where the family could be comfortable and just spend time with him. And I distinctly remember, as we're doing the paperwork and I'm signing it, his energy just standing with me. And at that point in time, spirits and ghosts and they had been silent for a while, or I had shut them out. And he had given me words to share things with her. And I didn't share them with her from, oh, I'm a medium, I can share gifts. I was nowhere near any of that ability or cognition or awareness. But I remember he was not in his body. I remember seeing him and who he was, and then having his spirit there, which was powerful. and I could feel it in the room. And he gave me the language and the words to comfort them and give them the information they needed to make that transition as smooth as possible, as smooth as it could be under those horrible circumstances. And I remembered leaving that day, and as I got in the elevator and then went to my car, I just sobbed. And I sobbed, and it was like these tears of what sadness, grief, and loss feels like, and also what the infinite feels like, that I could feel his spirit. And he kept saying, there's a story through this. They don't know what they don't know yet. I'm not supposed to be here anymore. Yes, this is painful and this is horrible, but it's for them. There's a reason for this. They have lessons to learn. And it was like a knowing. It wasn't like I had a notebook of information he was giving me, but it was a knowing. And then after that, I worked in hospice for, God, a lot of years, and worked with a lot of death and dying on, getting to walk alongside it in multiple journeys and see it and be at the bedside with patients dying or with families and in differing circumstances. And, towards the end, when my gifts were coming through more clearly, messages would come through and I would begin to deliver them. And that's when it became confusing for me as to my role professionally and in healthcare and what I did, and also my role from an avocation standpoint, from a spiritual standpoint. But me being in hospice gave me the opportunity to recognize that I had not grieved. And at my father's death at 19, and I think a lot of us can relate to repressed or suppressed grief. And the reason I am highlighting these experiences now and death, it's twofold. One, the volume right now in the energy field is very turned up. It's loud. It's like multiple radio stations are playing at one time. The energy is feeling very transitional. So there's a sensitivity and a vulnerability and an exposure energetically where we can be interpreting that in a multitude of ways: fear, pain, suffering, wanting to give up, moments of breakthrough, ecstasy, joy, as I mentioned earlier. That is happening. But it also feels like a big death. There is literal death happening. And in fact, I was on the phone with someone this morning who is making the compassionate decision, most likely to have a pet cross over, and having those conversations and seeing the energy and the messages that come through from spirits. The human me doesn't sometimes like to deliver what comes through, but I can also feel it. And I know that through the death experience, there's enlightenment. There is incredible expansion. And having lost my mom 2 years ago in a very different way than I lost my father, it was kind of like more of a long game, and us talking about death and grieving while she was still alive. But in the days leading up to her death, in and around her death, there was a portal of energy that was opened. And I moved my office down to my mom's room a while ago. I think some of you probably remember that, because the energy in this room, there's like a portal or a vortex, and I can feel it. One of the things I know from my experience around death is where death occurs, there's an imprint, there's a portal. And whether it is acute, traumatic, painful, destructive death, we all know what it's like to walk along the grounds of old battlefields, burial grounds, graveyards, even just different areas where death is prevalent or has been prevalent at some point in time. But if you have intimately experienced death with someone, been by their side as they have crossed over, even if it is a pet, because that's pretty powerful too. I've had enough of that, which I just celebrated, sadly and beautifully, a year of my dog Tex, his crossing over, which, a year. I miss him tremendously, but it was also beautiful It was painful and beautiful. And my mom's death was the same. It was painful and beautiful. And there's something that happens when we walk between those worlds where we are so viscerally feeling suffering, pain, loss, that it is just organic. It's primitive. And at the same time, we're brushed up against the divine, the otherworldly. Right now, the energy feels like the death portal.
I'm Camila Ramon, Peloton's first Spanish-speaking cycling and tread instructor. I'm an athlete, entrepreneur, and almost most importantly, a perreo enthusiast.
And I'm Liz Ortiz, former pro soccer player and Olympian, and like Kami, a perreo enthusiast. Come on, who is it? Our podcast, Hasta Abajo, is where sports, music, and fitness collide, and we cover it all, de arriba hasta abajo. Sit down with real game changers in the sports world, like Miami Dolphins CMO Priscilla Shoemate, who is redefining what it means to be a Latina leader.
It all changed when I had this guy come to me. He said to me, you know, you're not Latina enough. First of all, what does that mean?
My mouth is wide open. Yeah. History makers like the Zucar family, who became the first Peruvians to win a Grammy.
It was a very special moment for us. It's been 15 years for me in this career. Finally, things are starting to shift into a different level.
Listen to Hasta Abajo on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Presented by Capital One, founding partner of iHeart Women's Sports.
Sonoro and iHeart's My Cultura podcast network present The Setup, a new romantic comedy podcast starring Harvey Guillen and Christian Navarro. The Setup follows a lonely museum curator searching for love. But when the perfect man walks into his life...
Well, I guess I'm saying I like you. You like me?
He actually is too good to be true.
This is a con. I'm conning you. To get the Delano painting. We could do this together.
To pull off this heist, they'll have to get close and jump into the deep end together.
That's a huge leap, Fernando, don't you think? After you, Chulito.
But love is the biggest risk they'll ever take.
Fernando is never going to love you as much as he loves this job.
Chulito, that painting is ours.
Listen to The Setup as part of the My Cultura podcast network, available on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
I always had to be so good, no one could ignore me. Carve my path with data and drive. But some people only see who I am on paper. The paper ceiling, the limitations from degree screens to stereotypes that are holding back over 70 million stars. Workers skilled through alternative routes, rather than a bachelor's degree. It's time for skills to speak for themselves. Find resources for breaking through barriers at tearthepaperceiling.org. Brought to you by Opportunity at Work and the Ad Council.
Hey, this is Mel Reid, LPGA Tour winner and 6-time Ladies European Tour winner.
And Kira K. Dixon, NBC Sports reporter and host.
You forgot to say former Miss America, by the way. And we've got a new podcast, Quiet Please, with Mel
and Kira. We are bringing you spicy takes on sports and pop culture, some golf haps, and interviews with incredible people who have figured out how to make golf their superpower.
Or just people we like, plus tales from the road and everything in between. By the way, golf isn't just for the dads, Brads, and Chads.
Yeah, it's actually life's cheat code, and we're not going to be quiet about it on or off the course. We're bringing on some of our friends like Michelle Wee, Heather McMahon, Amanda Baliotis.
So, if you want to keep up with us and hear us yap, tune into our new podcast.
Listen to Quiet Please with Mel and Kira, an iHeart Women's Sports production in partnership with Deep Blue Sports and Entertainment. You can find us on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Presented by Capital One, founding partner of iHeart Women's Sports.
Dr. Joy here. You may know me from Therapy for Black Girls, where we're celebrating 400 episodes of the podcast. That's a whole lot of girl Me Too moments. For years, we've had deep, thoughtful, and inspiring conversations about Black women's mental health. And now we're celebrating this milestone in a big way. In this special episode, Peloton yogi Chelsea Jackson Roberts shares how yoga has taught her to stay grounded and present while balancing motherhood and self-care.
I can't control my partner. I can't control my child. I can't control anyone outside the way that I govern myself in this world.
And the celebration doesn't doesn't stop there. We'll continue this milestone with Dr. Lauren Mims, who joins me to discuss the powerful yet sometimes challenging transition from girlhood to womanhood for Black femmes. Together, we explore how we navigate this transformative journey with strength and grace.
Black girlhood is giggling, it's sisterhood, but it is also, I think, focusing on learning how to cope with really difficult things that are happening.
With insights like these, this 400th episode celebration is one for the books. Listen to Therapy for Black Girls on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Right now, the energy feels like the death portal. There's regeneration happening, and yet at the same time, something profound is shifting and dying. Our consciousness is shifting into new levels, and oftentimes, as we shift into another level of reality, a new level of awareness, growth, evolution, personal development, you can look at it from a multitude of angles. A lot of times we revisit where we were. We revisit pain and trauma. And I've said this before, and a good reference for this is my podcast on 5D consciousness and shifting into 5D consciousness, because it defines different levels of consciousness and gives you some tools and resources. The podcast, and there's a blog that goes along with it. But it feels like right now we are in 5D and keep shifting back into 3D. And that 3D shift, it's like we're revisiting lower frequencies, old stories, old pain, really deeply buried, whether it is in our conscious past in this lifetime or lifetimes or in our cellular memory and DNA. It feels like all of it, by the way. Lots of old stuff in my life has been coming back up in my conscious awareness and through precognitive energies where I'm puzzle piecing into the past. There's a lot of past life energy and symbolism and visions coming through for me. And then there is ancient past in humanity coming through. And it's like it's all flooding in, and it feels like there is wreckage and pain being closed and consolidated in order for something new to be born, yet there's something happening simultaneously. And I hope as I'm sharing this, I don't sound too esoteric and I'm losing you, because I've shared with all of you what's happening right now. It's like the language hasn't quite formed yet to explain what we're going through. We're in the middle of a vast paradigm shift. So whatever you're experiencing now, I encourage you, I'm laughing at what I'm about to say, I encourage you to think about death. And if you are literally right now walking through a death experience of someone you love, or you're taking care of someone who is terminally ill, you've recently experienced a death, or not even recently and it's coming up, sit with all of your feelings. And not just your feelings of pain, suffering, and sorrow, but where do you see the divine through whatever you're walking through? And if literal death isn't showing up for you right now, and hopefully it's not showing up for a lot of us, but if literal death isn't showing up, what within you is being buried, is dying, has no business coming with you into the future? What in you is fundamentally changing in order to regenerate something new? And can you sit in the discomfort? And I don't mean consternate or get stuck in the discomfort, but when the waves of suffering, pain, disillusionment, disorientation flood through your body, embrace them, breathe into them, and honor that flushing of energy that literally is changing you, because that energy right there, the energy that we're in, is very fertile. And that's what I found in, let's call it the death portal, the literal death portal, is it is so fertile because it's like walking between the worlds, the most visceral suffering, primal experience alongside of the infinite. It's the quantum field. And I feel like right now, for me especially, and a lot of people have recounted this to me, it's like we're in the quantum field. We're writing new timelines, new stories, and making space to process the pain and the fear and the suffering and acknowledge it, but seeding it with more love, more hope, more faith, pure positive potential. And this morning, quite literally, early this morning, I got in the car after my Pilates class, and I was just feeling this flood of discomfort and disorientation, and I noticed it. So I just sat down before driving out of my parking space, and I sat in the car, and I just said, bring it on. Bring it on. And I inhaled and exhaled for a handful of breaths. And as I started to do that, it was like the sides of my mouth turned up. After 2 or 3 breath cycles, the anxiety and the flush of disorientation and kind of panic flushed through, and a smile, like energetically, it turned into a smile. I mean, literally it did, and energetically it did. And it was like, okay, 1 wave down, 3,000 to go. But I just kind of laughed, because we have the ability to alchemize and transmute this energy now. How are you doing that? And I'm going to ask a question as I wrap up here, because I think there's 2 camps, and maybe the answer can be yes to both or no to both. I think, anything goes. Do you fear death, or do you fear living forever? And of course, I'm in the camp of, if there's a fear, I don't fear death. I'm like, if that is the case, I know it is a transition from one space to another. And that is not something I've ever feared or fundamentally feared. But what do I fear? Infinity, living forever. If there is a fear between one or the fear, do you fear dying and it all being over, or do you fear living forever? And the fear of mine would be like infinity, because it's so vast. That's my question for you. Is it that you're afraid of death, or is it that you're afraid of forever? And that's kind of the question, like from the soul, my soul lately, that's been coming through. What is it that I'm afraid of? And it's being able to blot out fear, face my fears head on. And I think with Neptune and Aries, it's been quite curious. The energy is different. It's very different. The signature is different. The rules of engagement are beginning to change, and I'll talk more about that later, and some practical tools and insights around this. But I will tell you that with Neptune and Aries, it's not about being fearless. It's about facing your fears square in the eye. Head on, head to head, looking at those fears, claiming them, naming them, in order to transmute. And that's this regeneration process we're in. I encourage everyone to sit down and journal anytime you want, but in the next handful of days, sit down and journal around death and what comes up for you, whether it's memories and experiences around death, what you're walking through now, or phases in your life where parts and aspects of you have died in order for other parts of you to be born, or if that regeneration is happening for you now. Because the more that you clarify what is no longer serving you, what is changing fundamentally within you in order to make space for what is coming through, the more centered you will be and feel. Someone reminded me this weekend about centering prayer. We were talking about God and the divine, and we had all these insane synchronicities, just some peripheral friends that we connected with, and I really enjoyed myself. And this woman, we were just talking about our spiritual lives, and she said, yeah, we do centering prayer at our church, and I've participated in centering prayer before, but really meditation and connecting with the divine and with yourself, finding ways to center within yourself right now, whether it be through nature and grounding, journaling, meditation, your therapy, your community support, your exercise. make your life a centering prayer right now, because the energy is enriching and it has tremendous value for the years ahead, especially with the turbulence we're experiencing on a multitude of levels with the earth, with economics right now, and geopolitics. The dissension is polarizing, and this year, 2025, I truly believe is going to become more volatile and drastic. And for me, it's keeping my own center, my own point of attraction, so I am safe and divinely directed no matter where I am. And I hope that and believe that for all of you. So whatever practices right now that you are finding clarity and solace in, keep practicing those. But think about what is dying within you or literally around you, if that is the case. And a lot of tenderness and prayers coming out to if you are walking through death right now, because it's just not easy at any time. But what I do know about death in my experience, and for many people I've shared with, is through it, there's transcendence. There's something other. There's something greater that can come through it. And we're in it right now. So in order for something greater, be in the now, be in all of it. Make all of it meaningful. And trust this regeneration, even when it feels unstable and unsteady and hard to find your way. Trust, come back to your center. Okay, everybody, here's to death. Here's to a beautiful week ahead for everyone. And give me some feedback. Let me know what's going on in your life and any insights or things that are happening for you. I know a lot of people have a lot of rich dreams happening right now. I've been experiencing that. And there's a lot of immediacy in my dreams, a lot of volatility that I'm seeing. And other people are as well. There's a lot of prevalence in that. So let me know how messages, signs, synchronicities, downloads are coming through for you, because like I said, the volume is turned up, and being able to synthesize, interpret, and utilize that in a healthy way can be quite confusing. So reach out, let me know, and we'll share some of the feedback and insight that might seem relevant to everyone. Be well, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to Soul Sessions. If you've got questions, do not hesitate to reach out. Email us, podcast@soulsessions.me. If you love this podcast and you want to hear more, make sure you're following it, liking and subscribing, and sharing it with other people. Send this energy out. Share it with other people. Remember, you can always get your dose of Soul Sessions. New episodes drop on Wednesdays. You can also follow me on Instagram, TikTok. It's @soulpathology, or check out soulpathology.com. I appreciate you and your light. Thanks for listening.
From the producers who brought you Princess of South Beach comes a new podcast, The Setup. The Setup follows a lonely museum curator, but when the perfect man walks into his life...
Well, I guess I'm saying I like you. You like me?
He actually is too good to be true.
This is a con. I'm conning you to get the Dalama painting. We can do this together.
Listen to The Setup on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey sis, it's Dr. Joy from Therapy for Black Girls. We've had 400 episodes of conversations, growth, and healing. So we're celebrating. Join us for a special episode with internationally recognized yogi Chelsea Jackson Roberts as she shares wisdom on mindfulness, movement, and motherhood.
I waited later to have children, and I still have exactly what I knew that I wanted.
You don't want to miss this special episode. Listen to Therapy for Black Girls on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Tickets are on sale now, y'all, for our 2025 iHeart Country Festival, presented by Capital One, happening Saturday, May 3rd at the Moody Center in Austin, Texas. Don't miss your chance to see Brooks and Dunn, Thomas Rhett, Rascal Flatts, Cole Swindell, Sam Hunt, Megan Maroney, Bailey Zimmerman, Nate Smith. Tickets are on sale now at Ticketmaster.com.
Sometimes as dads, I think we're too hard on ourselves. We get down on ourselves on not being able to, we're the providers, but we also have to learn to take care of ourselves. Wrap away, you got to pray for yourself as well as for everybody else, but never forget yourself. Self-love made me a better dad because I realized my worth.
Never stop being a dad. That's dedication. Find out more at fatherhood.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Are you hungry? Colleen Witt here, and Eating While Broke is back for season 4 every Thursday on the Black Effect Podcast Network. This season, we've got a legendary lineup serving up broke dishes and even better stories. On the menu, we have Tony Baker, Nick Cannon, Melissa Ford, October London, and Carrie Harper Howie turning Big Macs into big moves. Catch Eating While Broke every Thursday on the Black Effect Podcast Network, iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your favorite shows. Come hungry for season 4.